Hi, welcome to Retiring Well. Folks, I'm excited today because we've got a great show lined up for you. Typically every week I'm just giving you a lot of snippets of a lot of different subjects. But I just had a recent case here where, I was able to use a lot of different things in that planning. And I thought, you know what? I think this would be a great opportunity. I've never done this before, to just share that case study with you, just so you could see kind of how all these things work together. So stay tuned.
Retiring Well, brought to you by Centennial Wealth Advisory, financial advisors specializing in retirement planning and serving all of Northern Michigan. Retiring Well, helping you plan for a successful and comfortable retirement. Retiring Well, plan to retire well.
Hi, welcome back. Folks, as I shared with you, I'm going to share this case study with you. Now, I've protected their names so to keep confidentiality, so we're going to call them Jack and Jill Smith. I also had permission to kind of share some of their data. You're not going to be able to tie it to them, so but I think you're going to find this very, very interesting. So with that, let's get started. So I met with Jack and Jill. I found out they're both age 62. They've been married for 28 years, but this is both their second marriage. Jack, from a previous marriage, had one daughter. Jill had a son and a daughter from a previous marriage. Between those three kids, they've got 5 grandkids, which they love to spend time with. Jack, by trade, is a carpenter. Jill was a registered nurse. Both were very healthy. They love to travel, and they enjoy the outdoors, hiking and snowshoeing and things of the like. So they're both questioning whether they can retire. That's what brought them into my office, is when that might be able to happen. Jack feels like if he wasn't working, he probably would continue to do odd jobs. He still kind of enjoys doing that. He just kind of wants to do it on his own time. So he figured if doing odd jobs here and there, he might make about $1,000 per month. So with that, I continued to try to ask some more questions, to get to where I could answer their question as to whether they could retire. I needed to have a kind of a 10,000-foot view of where they're at. I found out that Jill had a small pension. In the early days when she was a nurse, she worked for a medical facility that still had a pension plan, and she put enough time in there that it built up in that period of time. We discussed survivor benefits, understanding that they both felt Jill would probably outlive Jack. The single pay out, meaning basically just based on her life, that she could get a better pension payout. But, and it would become less if there was any kind of survivor benefit. So although it was probably best in their best interest to go the single pay route, they thought that, just in the likelihood that anything would happen to Jill, she really wanted that to be there for Jack so he didn't have to lose that income. So we kind of looked at what would 100% survivor benefit be. The difference really wasn't that dramatic. They thought they could live without, so they chose that. It ended up being that at age 62 right now, if she took that right now, it'd be $860 per month. Found out or learned that Jack's Social Security at full retirement age 67, was going to be $2,100. Jill's Social Security at full retirement age, or age 67, was going to be $1,366. Now, found out that when she worked for that one company, when in her first marriage, when they began, to have the couple of kids, she stayed at home for a period of time in raising the kids. So she had not built up her Social Security during that period of time. So that's why it happened to be a little bit less. We discussed, when do you take that Social Security? They both understood that at age 62, if they retired, they could take it now. I shared with them that would be 25% less than what it would be at full retirement age. And there was going to be some earnings limitations if they continued to work that we'd have to talk about. I said, but if they waited to age 70, it could, they grew it past full retirement age, like 8% per year. Plus, if there was any consumer price index, raises, it would grow by that too. So that being 2.5%, I said you could see, maybe 10.5% per year if you could wait that few years. So anyway, we talked about that, when they should take it, and they kind of started settling, they understood that with the survivor benefit, that the survivor of the two is going to keep the greater of the two Social Security. So we looked at a scenario where, what did it look like if Jill took it now at age 62, but Jack let his grow to age 70, and then that would be the survivor benefit. It's kind of settled on that, and we said, okay, well, let's kind of see what that looks like in our planning. Learned that Jack had about $164,000 in his IRA. Jill had about $274,000 in her 403B plan at the hospital. And so I took the opportunity to start discussing, what do rollover options look like? She has the ability when she stops working to roll that 403B into her own IRA. Well, there's some pros and cons to that. She's going to have a lot more investment options, but with those investment options are going to come some fees and commissions depending on, how she invests. So we talked about that a little bit and whether that would be best for her. Found out that they had about $110,000 in savings, just checking savings account, and best that they had no debt. They had done real good about paying off their mortgage, and they had absolutely no debt to have to deal with should they go into retirement. So to say the least, now I had a little bit enough to kind of put some numbers together to kind of see what the 10,000 foot view would look like. Now I told them, I said, I don't want this to replace any formal income plan that we're going to want to do before we pull the trigger on this. But I said, let's just kind of look at that and see if all the pieces are there. So I said, do you know how much income you want or need in retirement? And, they came up with this $5,000 per month number. And so that began a discussion as to, well, how did you arrive at that number? And they had not done any, like what I call formal budget and, written it down. But they at one point, they were curious themselves. They wanted to know how much they were living on. And they thought with no debt and looking at the bills that they had, they said, I think we'd be real comfortable if we had $5,000 a month to, meet our expenses. So I said, fine, let's start with that. Let's see what that looks like. So I took that $5,000 per month and I said, okay, what's your Social Security at full retirement age? Well, I just start there for both of them. Well, that was, $3,400. So, all right, let's take that out of there. You've got that pension we can trigger. That's $860. What's the difference? Well, it ended up being $667. Where's that going to come from? Well, I said, that's going to have to come from your IRA, 403B and in savings, right? So, what's that look like? So look, I took that, I said, well, all that totals about $548,000. We then had a discussion as to what would be a good withdrawal amount that we could pull from that savings for income. Okay. I said, well, let's start with 4%. I said, if a portfolio is structured appropriately, okay, let's say we can get, a portfolio growing by 5, 6, 7%, with very little volatility, and we could be pulling 4%. Well, that allows us to maybe maintain principal and grow it a little bit over time while we're taking that income. So let's see what that looks like. So I took the $548,000, took 4% of that. Well, that's just under $22,000 a year. Per month, that was basically $1,800. I said, now I'm comparing that with the difference we came up with of $667. And I said, I think this is doable. I think we got a plan. Again, not to take the place of a formal income plan because I'm not accounting for inflation in this scenario, but I think there's enough pieces of the puzzle here that we can put a plan together. So to say the least, they were very excited. I mean, you could tell just answering that question, can we retire if we want to today was very much a relief to them. And so that's always exciting for me to be able to share that with somebody. So folks, when I come back, I'm going to start talking about some other concerns that we had to kind of start working through that were part of that. So stay tuned and I'll share those with you when we come back. Hi, listen folks, I want to invite you to a virtual live event. We're going to hold it April 20th at noon and 6 o'clock. We're going to talk about what is the state of affairs as we find ourselves today. 2020 with the pandemic, and now we're in 2021. There's a vaccine rollout. where we stand today, where are we going? How should you position yourself to better be prepared for the situations we find ourselves in? So I'm going to encourage you, don't miss this event. Sign up. You can register online at cen-wealth.com. We'll see you there.
Professional quarterbacks have a game plan. Passing the ball with power and accuracy is vital, and good communication within the team is key. As you can see, we aren't professional quarterbacks, but at Northern Michigan's Centennial Wealth Advisory, we are professional financial advisors. And just like a good quarterback, we have a game plan, a holistic approach for your financial future, using income planning, tax planning, estate planning, wealth management, and healthcare planning to help you plan to retire well. We have lived in Northern Michigan all our lives, and we have offices in Traverse City, Gaylord, Petoskey, and Cadillac. Give Centennial Wealth Advisory a call or visit us at cen-wealth.com and let us help you plan to retire well.
We here at Centennial Wealth Advisory realize that everyone has been affected by this coronavirus in one way or another. We watch our retirement accounts drop significantly in value, and we have questions. Can I retire in a recession? How will the coronavirus affect my retirement? How do I develop an income stream in a recession? Can I still retire this year? If these are concerns of yours, contact us today for a free initial consultation and learn what you can do now to help you weather the storm. Simply call 888-608-5825 or visit cenwealth.com and let us help you plan to retire well. Welcome back. So folks, as I was telling you before, they were really excited to find out that if they could, that if they wanted to retire today, they could. So that was great. But then that rose a question. They knew how much their employers were paying for their medical insurance, and they're like, Larry, in that budget that we did, we were not reflecting health insurance, because at the time we weren't paying for it. So that's a real big concern. We understand that we can get Medicare when we're age 65, but if we retire here at 62, there's 3 years here that we've got to, bridge the gap and pay for insurance. And we're again, knowing what our employers are paying, is this doable under those circumstances? So Centennial Wealth and myself, we're not licensed to sell health insurance. So, but we do have somebody on staff that is. So I was able to bring her in, and that allowed us to start beginning a discussion to talk about, the Affordable Care Act, those premium credits that were out there that could help pay for the health insurance, depending on your income. We discussed, bronze, silver, gold plans, the various deductibles and out-of-pocket, costs or max that was going to be there and which one looked good for them. We discussed HMOs or PPOs, which one of those made better sense for them. In the end, because of their good health, they decided that the bronze plan would be appropriate. They weren't expecting to have to pay a lot of those out-of-pocket costs because of that, so they decided bronze plan would be appropriate. But because of the travel they wanted to do and being outside the network, maybe in a lot of cases, they thought maybe a PPO made better sense. So I know that was discussed. Well, then we started kind of talking about these premium credits that are out there under the Affordable Care Act. I showed them this sliding scale, and it was just an example. But we showed this is a silver plan that costs $5,000, and I showed them at the various income levels. It shows how much of a subsidy they could get to pay for that. So we kind of looked at this sliding scale, and honestly, it looked like the sweet spot for them is if they could keep their income about $35,000, if we could kind of control that in any way, then, basically you were going to get a subsidy that was going to considerably pay for a lot of it. Now, this was a silver plan. They were even in a bronze plan, which is lesser cost. All right. So after having discussed that, kind of found the sweet spot, with all the subsidy premium credit that they could get, basically their cost was only going to be $310 a month. that was very exciting to them because, not only had we answered the question, could they retire, but now what was a major concern of theirs with health insurance, we were finding a way to cover at a very, very low cost. So they were, to say the least, very happy with that. But now, we wanted to get into this discussion about, Jack waiting to take Social Security. We want to go back to that. If he waits to age 70, then, where's that income going to come from? And couple that with, if we're going to keep our income, at 35,000, for health insurance reasons, what's this impact going to be on our savings? So we kind of looked at it this way. So, okay, Jack, if you got your part-time work, you're making about $1,000 per month. Let's go with that. Jill, if you take your Social Security early, that's $1,000 a month. You got your pension of $860 a month. All right, to stay at 35,000, that means we're going to have to pull $1,031 out of the IRA every month to stay at, $3,916, or what would be $35,000 a year. Okay, now we know we need money to live on that's more than that. So in this case, I took their $5,000, I added the $310 a month in premiums because they had not reflected that. And I said, all we need is to take $1,394 a month out of our savings to bridge that gap for our income. So I said, take that times 12, that's $16,000 a year. Take that over the 3-year period that we're trying to cover. Total we're taking out of savings, which is our non-taxable account, right? Because we're gonna try to control our income. I said it's about $50,000. I said, going back, knowing that you have $110,000 in savings, and for this 3-year period, we're going to pull 50 of it. I don't think that draws your checking savings down into critical levels. So I think it's very, very doable. All right. So then we talked about this, this idea now that once you get to age 65, we've got this 3-year period, we've got there now. We've got Medicare, right? Now I said, when that time comes, I said, remember that person that you talked to regarding the health insurance, you're going to want to talk to again, who's licensed, who can, advise you as to, getting the proper Medicare supplemental plan. There's a couple different routes you can go, a lot of different plans, and there's a lot of pros and cons that, we're going to want that licensed individual to talk to you about. So just remember, as that day approaches, let us know, and we'll kind of walk you through that. We talked about the Social Security a little bit more, the fact that, Jill's going to take a little bit less, because she's taking it early, but Jack is going to be able to grow his over that period of time if he waits to age 70. And again, these were just estimates. We actually have the software and tools to, know exactly what that number was going to be. So, but again, we're just trying to, get the 10,000 foot view. But where I wanted to go with this is I wanted to see if there was any Roth conversion opportunities. I know there wasn't any during the 3-year period, okay, while we were waiting, wanted to have the health insurance plan. But now when we get to age 65, we've got this income. Is there any room for Roth conversions? So I looked at the lower bracket because, that's a bracket. If we can buy Uncle Sam out at that level, that's what we want to do, right? So I looked at the top of the 12% bracket for a married couple was going to be taxable income about $80,250. Okay. Now at age 65, the present standard deduction for them would be $27,400. So adding that to it, I want to understand what is the gross income at which they can have that will stay all in the 12% bracket. That ends up being about $107,000. So now I went back and said, okay, well, if they're taking all their income, at this point, let's say they're taking all their income from the pension, Social Security, and IRA, that's about $63,000 a year, remember, $5,300 a month times 12. And I said, so how much room do we have? So if we're taking all that as income, we have about almost $44,000 per year. We can be converting IRA money, paying the tax now on it at 12% federal and whatever the state is, and getting it over into a Roth IRA, okay? And then I looked at that 43,000 and I said, looking at how much you have in IRA, the fact is, I know there's going to be growth there, but, approximately it's going to take about 10, 11, 12 years, and we can have that completely converted over to Roth. wouldn't that be a great thing? Not only from a surviving spouse standpoint, because whoever lives now has got all that in a Roth, but from a legacy standpoint, because now you've got the ability to pass that on to the kids tax free. So they like that idea, and they got really excited about it. So then I just wanted to get a snapshot. What does their situation look like at age 70? Remember, this is at the age in which now Jack has grown his Social Security. And, what does income look like now at that point if this plan unfolds appropriately? Well, I took Jack's Social Security of about $2,900. I took Jill's Social Security of about $1,000. You got her pension. And then I looked at what they were going to need. Now, again, remember, this is not reflecting inflation because it probably would have been a little bit higher by that point. But basically, they're only taking $475 out of the IRA. Now, looking at how much they have in IRA and what they're pulling at this point, it's not very much. Is it conceivable that, we're going to be able to, if we're consistently growing their portfolio by, 5, 6, 7%, and now they're only pulling maybe 1, 2% out. We've got a great ability now from here on out with all that guaranteed income they got coming in and growing this account even more. So I felt really good about that, and so did they. And then we want to look, what are the tax ramifications going to be once you reach age 70? So we looked at Jack and Jill's Social Security totaling, at that time about $47,000. The amount they're pulling out of the IRA, remember that $475 in their pension of $860, there's $16,000 a year. And what I wanted to do is find out how much of their Social Security was going to be taxable so I could kind of figure out, what their tax would be. So if you didn't know this, and we've shared this with you in some previous segments, in calculating that, they make you take half your Social Security plus your other income. So that's $23,000 plus, is half their Social Security, and then their other income being the 16 totals about $39,000. Now, Social Security, the IRS has a couple thresholds. Once you reach $32,000, okay, now they start, 50 cents on the dollar of your Social Security is taxable income. And then there's another threshold, I believe, at $44,000. Now it's 85 cents on the dollar. But it came out to $39,000. If I subtract the $32,000, that left $7,500. Half of that being, Social Security taxable income. So that was about $3,700 of all that Social Security they were taking was considered taxable income. Added that to the other income of $16,000. So their total income right now is about just under $20,000. But remember, they get a standard deduction of $27,000, which completely offset any taxable income. Basically, bottom line in this scenario, they were going to see zero tax. All right. So really good thing. But I had to say to them now this is a good scenario, but remember back when we were talking about Roth conversions, right? What were we doing? We were accelerating income, all right? And I'm not reflecting that in this scenario. So just want to give you a heads up. When we get to this point, we're going to want to take a look at how much we've converted, okay? And then we're going to see if it makes sense. Do you want to just, continue to pay zero tax, or do you want to aggressively continue to, try to convert the rest of us? So we've got a couple things working against each other at this point, but we'll find a balance when that time comes. So, and then that being said, if you see the difference between the 20,000 of income and the 27, you could pull out of the IRA at that time about $7,000, and we're not going to have, we're going to have very little tax. So, again, just we'll look at we'll run the mock tax return scenarios at that time, nail that number down a little bit better, look at the pros and cons, and try to make the best decision accordingly. So now we've got the 10,000-foot view. We've got a kind of a schematic of the plan that we might help them to achieve. We know what their objectives are. We know their goals. Now, when it comes to talking about investments, I can come up with the appropriate strategy. They're going to have to rely very heavily, as you saw in this plan, that first 8 years from 62 to age 70, where they're relying heavily on their savings to get them and bridge the gap. So how we invest accordingly is going to have to be appropriate to that situation. When they get to age 70 now and they're taking very little out of the savings, and can that strategy maybe change a little bit? Absolutely, but we're going to want to have those discussions. Again, I reflected to them regarding inflation that we were not factoring that in. This is going to require a formal income plan, and I'm going to want to run a couple different scenarios to make sure that what we've talked about here is going to make some sense. So, and then understand that with any plan, it's not just a set it and leave it kind of a thing. We're going to want to continue to monitor this thing every year to make sure we're staying on track, that there's no anything new that's coming on the horizon, any regulation or laws that are going to change anything dramatically here. So just understand that we're going to want to continue to monitor that to make sure we stay on track. And then folks, I want to have some more further discussions about risk. In that income plan that we do, we're going to have to put some growth rate assumptions in there. I have, some recommendations that I want to bring forth to you, and I'll discuss the risks thereof appropriately. But I want to know what your personal feelings are, and I want to make sure that how you feel about risk lines up with what we're doing in the plan as well. So that's very important. We want to have those discussions. And then as we move forward in our planning, one thing we've not talked about in this is long-term care. I understand you guys are healthy now, but what's your family background look like? Do you have any concerns here with long-term care somewhere down the road? And what are the options that are available in taking care of that contingency? Estate planning. Understand that you got a mixed family, and how do you want to take care of them appropriately? We're going to have to bring an estate planning attorney onto the team. We're going to want to have those discussions and have a good estate plan accordingly. So, folks, I hope you understand that, and again, going back to why I wanted to share this with you, did you see how there's so many different factors all playing out in a person's plan? You've got the income planning, what kind of income are we planning for? Where are we pulling income from? And as we take income, what's the tax ramifications of that going to be right now and down the road? Healthcare, as we're taking income, right? And the taxability thereof. How were we kind of controlling income there? And how were we taking care of that contingency? Estate planning. Where was the role there? And then once I get a estate plan, have I funded it appropriately? Are all my investment accounts, matching that plan? And then the investment management. When it comes all down to, what our goals and objectives are, we want to have the strategy that matches those goals and objectives appropriately. So again, I hope you found some value in this. Every week, again, we share you all this information on a lot of different subjects. We're getting just snippets of things that you might want to consider, but it's so fun when you can sit down with somebody and you can pull all that together, and make sure that all those things are working together for them. And sometimes they will work against each other, but you got to find that balance accordingly. So again, thank you for joining us this week. Stay tuned. See you next week.